Welcome to today's Zcash Community Call, where we're going to be meeting some of the candidates standing for election to the Zcash Community Grants Committee, more commonly known as ZCG. The largest slice of the Zcash Dev Fund is allocated to fund independent teams to perform major ongoing development or other work that benefits the Zcash ecosystem. Grants are chosen by a 5-person committee whose members are elected by the Zcash Community Advisory Panel. The Zcash Foundation administers the ZCG funds and provides administrative support, including running the elections, but the committee is entirely independent in terms of its decision-making. To date, ZCG has approved over $7.1 million worth of grants and has distributed over $4.6 million for completed milestones. It currently has over 146,000 ZEC in its treasury, ready to fund grants, and that's worth $6.8 million at today's market price. And more funds accrue each time a Zcash block is mined. Committee members serve a 1-year term, and 4 of the current committee members' terms expire at the end of this year. So we are holding an election to fill those 4 seats. 8 candidates have put themselves forward for the community's consideration, and 6 of them are on the call today. We'll begin by asking the candidates to introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to questions from the Zcash community. Let's start with Wobbs.
Hey everyone, hope everyone is having a great day today. My name is Brian, but I also go by Wobbs on the forums and Twitter. Happy to be here running for re-election for the committee. I've been a community member since at least the Powers of Tau setup ceremony and participated in that. And I have a background working in the information security field for over a decade. I've had the privilege to dabble in a variety of specializations within that field, but have primarily focused on incident response and intrusion analysis. So yeah, I'm just excited to be here. I love Zcash and hope to serve again on the next committee.
Okay, now let's hear from Jason.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason McGee. I've been working as an independent trader and investor focused on crypto and equity since 2018. My background's in finance and accounting. Prior to 2018, I spent 15 years working on the non-investment side of a couple different hedge funds, focused on things like clearing and settlement of cash and securities. That's what got me interested in crypto. I'm a big proponent of financial privacy. Bitcoin being a transparent ledger always struck me as a major weakness, which is what drew me to Zcash. I bought my first Zcash in mid-2017 and started following the project closely. Within Zcash, I'm an active member of the community. I've been involved in a couple different governance initiatives, including amending ZIP 1014 to give ZCG a discretionary budget, and served as a moderator in the Telegram community. I'm also one of the current committee members, and I'd love the opportunity to continue to serve another year.
Okay, Michael.
Hey, thanks. My name's Michael. I'm super excited that there are 8 people standing. That's great that there is that much interest and excitement around Zcash. I am a currently sitting member on the ZCG, and I think we've had a pretty good year. I've had a lot of fun. It's very humbling. It's been quite an experience. I'd be honored to continue my history in Zcash. I guess I got into it 2017, 2018. I built an app called Zec Pages, which was a social media like Twitter-like app that ran off the memo field, basically used Zcash as like its own little REST API interface in the memo field, which was kind of cool. To me, privacy is super exciting, and that's a big part of why I've built that and gotten into Zcash, because like once you actually use it, once you've done something that's truly private, that's permissionless and private, you kind of see the potentials and the excitement and the dangers and all that come with true privacy. So it's super exciting. It's been an exciting year. I think we've gotten a lot of W's as ZCG, and I think there's a lot of room to grow though. And I would be super honored to do another year.
Next up is G Guy.
Hello, my name is Matthew, or G Guy. I live in Australia. My background's in IT, been professionally working in IT for 20 or so years, most of that as a software engineer. My background with Zcash, history of Zcash, been a long time lurker, and then recently, the last couple of years, been a bit more active on the forums and in the Zcash space. I think primarily my excitement about Zcash is if you were to pick any coin, any cryptocurrency that exists today that you'd want to use as the base layer technology, I think Zcash has that. So it really excites me on where Zcash can go in the future and what we can make of it. And also I've got 2 young kids as well. So I kind of have this sci-fi vision in my head of what the future looks like, and with AI, and basically there's going to be, it's not going to be long, there's going to be a chat GPT that you're going to be able to say, who's G guy on the Zcash forums, and you are going to be able to know everything about me that exists ever, and that is legit coming in a few years. So a little bit of privacy might be good in that world. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next up is Thor.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm Thor Torrens on Twitter. I wrote some stuff in the forum, and I'll just go over that briefly. First started investing in Zcash in 2018 area. I kind of missed the whole Bitcoin boat, even though I knew about it and told people to buy it and was told to buy it. And I look at that as almost as a blessing in disguise, because once I really did a deep dive into everything, I don't think I missed anything at all. I think it's the beta test run. I think it's the prototype. And I think Zcash fixes the several problems it has. I have Zec.art, which we were showcasing Zcash artwork on. And then I don't know if you guys remember, I had Zecware.com, where we did a little Zcash merchandise website. And I think we'll be bringing that back soon for some limited edition stuff fun too. And then I have buyz.cash, which I did a little landing page with social proof with the live price on it. And I'm really just passionate about Zcash. Like G Guy, I have some children as well, and my children actually have Zcash stickers on their lunchbox. So we're also influencing the elementary school and middle school kids wherever we can. And I got those at the ZCon in Vegas, which was, to me, was, I already knew Zcash was a sleeping giant, but to really meet everyone and reach out and touch them and learn from them and see them speak on stage, I was like, wow, this is a sleeping giant here. And it's very important that we spread the message of Zcash and we spread the message of privacy, because, kind of like the evolution of the internet, not a lot of people, the world is online, but the world is not on crypto yet. And when they do come on crypto, I think this Web3 will evolve the same way Web 1 and Web 2 did, into encryption, into privacy. And it's imperative for the human race, really. So I'm just happy to be here, and I probably left a bunch of stuff out, but yeah, I spent 10 years in the entertainment and television. I was a teleprompter operator in New York City. That I somehow parlayed into working at the White House for a year, which I was able to rub elbows and shoulders with a lot of power players. After the White House, I didn't get invited back for the new administration, even though I think they would have loved me. And now I'm just kind of sitting at home, investing and trading and waiting for the next thing. I just invested in 2 startup companies, which I'll tell you guys about later, which has nothing to do with crypto or Zcash. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I would love to stand on the grant committee and pursue my passion for Zec and Zcash and ECC and the foundation and our entire ecosystem. So thanks, guys.
Okay, last but not least, Amber.
Hi, I'm Amber. I am Ambimorph on the forum and on Twitter and various other places. And my background is in computer science, in coding theory, information theory. I've been a Zcash fan since the beginning, and I consider it kind of a fulfillment of the original vision of Bitcoin, which in turn means the realization of cypherpunk values. I've been interested and semi-involved in the cypherpunk community since the 90s. And, that means to me the values of privacy enhancing tech for the purpose of social good. And I think Zcash really is an outstanding, should be one of the most obvious players in that space protecting us. So I have not been really deeply involved in Zcash in the last several years because I've been off on a different kind of adventure doing things in the nutritional space. But I've been really wanting to get more involved, and I feel like this is one place where I could really contribute my knowledge, and ready to face the challenges of working with you guys if I should be elected.
Cool. Well, as I said earlier, there are 8 people standing for election. We have 6 of them on the call today. The 2 candidates who unfortunately weren't able to join us today are Angst01 and Zcash KR, and you can learn more about them on the Zcash community forums. Okay, it's time to move on to questions from the community. These questions have been suggested and upvoted by members of the Zcash community forums. And the first one comes from Kofefe. I love these names that come from the forums, just these random names. And they had 10 people upvote this. If elected, would you be prepared to sit for a 6-month term and then stand again in 6 months' time alongside Don't Panic Burns? We could potentially have a name drawn from a hat for the person to serve the 6-month term. Now, for context, this refers to the fact that the majority of the committee members' terms expire at the same time, which potentially presents issues with continuity and having to reset everything at the end of every year. The reason that Don't Panic Burns isn't up for election this time is because he was elected back in June when Hudson Jameson stepped down, thus enabling us to have a slightly staggered set of elections, 4 in December and 1 currently in June. Let's start off by asking that to Jason.
Yeah, so now that the committee members or the committee has member continuity, yes, I'd be comfortable sitting for the 6-month term and running for re-election with Cody. I'm also okay drawing names from a hat to figure out who stands for election. And who knows, maybe it'll even happen organically the way it did with Hudson. But regardless, I do think that the committee should make it a priority to have 3 and 2 staggered elections.
Okay, Michael.
Would I be prepared to sit for a 6-month term? Yeah. Do I think that's how it should play? Maybe. I was kind of thinking about doing this last year, and I was actually talked out of it when Hudson did it. Someone made the point, like, Mike, you were voted on for a 1-year term, and if you step down, right, think about the people who've stepped down, the risks and the change in continuity there. Yeah, I'm prepared for it. If that's what's right, it's what's right. I think picking a name out of a hat makes a ton of sense if that's what we do. Yeah, I'm not convinced that's 100% necessary, but if it's what we do, I'm totally down.
G Guy.
Yeah, I think on the forums, it seems clear. I think this is a community decision to be made, not a decision by the ZCG members. And I think it's pretty clear that the community want this. If I was elected, I don't think we need to discuss it. Just I'll just sit for 6 months and rerun. That's absolutely fine.
Wobbs?
I'm totally fine with staggering, having a 2 and 3 staggered election. So yeah, no concerns with me.
Amber?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I have no strong opinion either way, but I'm totally willing.
And finally, Thor?
I'm cool with it. Makes total sense to me. Today's the 15th. 1 + 5 is 6. We got some synchronicity with 6 months. I'm cool with it.
Okay. Okay, the next question is from G Guy. Do you think we should keep expecting more from ZCG members and in effect make the ZCG role a paid part-time position? Or do you think we should focus more on the core competency of reviewing grants and keep attracting a larger and more diverse set of candidates? So let's start off with G Guy, and you can kind of explain the context for this question and give us your view on it.
Yeah, so basically it's just that debate of, is this meant to be a, really high time commitment role, or is this meant to be we approve grants, we want a really diverse set of applicants and experiences that they bring and have the benefits on that side of things. Personally, the actual answer to that question is I don't really know. I guess it depends on how ZCG evolves over time. Do we stay connected to ZF? Do we become independent? If we become independent, of course, it's going to require a much higher time commitment. So that's naturally just going to swing that way. But the 2 points that I would probably like to make on this is, I think, first off, we need to make sure ZCG is operating really smart and efficiently. So as an example, I guess not being in the meetings, I don't know how it all plays out, but when I'm sitting there reading the meeting minutes and I see that in one breath, people are talking about whether or not to approve a $1 million grant, and then the very next sentence, we're debating whether or not to approve $200 worth of discretionary funds to a global ambassador, I'm not sure that kind of matches up. And what's the time commitment we're spending on the global ambassador program? Is that not that that's not very important, very important. I think it's going to actually pay great dividends for Zcash. But I think we need to work out whether or not that can be a little bit more handled outside those meetings, and maybe it can be a little bit automated, and maybe the global ambassadors can all sit in a room and have their own little committee and aggregate these requests, and we can get them approved through ZF. And then the second point on top of that is compensation for the time spent as ZCG members. So if it turns out that even after making everything more efficient and we've got time commitments to where we think they should be, I think that it is important that we compensate ZCG members with the time that they actually have spent doing that work, averaged for all members, I guess. And I think that's really important because, as we've said before, ZCG grabs the highest percentage of the dev fund. Should we not be trying to attract the greatest candidates for that role? So if somebody enters the Zcash ecosystem and they say, oh, I want to contribute more, I want to do things, what options do they have? Well, they could go apply for a job at ZF or ECC. They could apply to be on the Bootstrap or the ZF board, for example, which is a much lower time commitment to them. They could apply for a grant and be compensated that way, or they could apply to ZCG. And you think the most important, so one of the most important positions in the Zcash ecosystem, we're not compensating correctly. And the incentives for joining that board, therefore, probably a little bit lower. So are we going to have the best members on the committee? I don't know. Maybe not. That's my thoughts.
Okay. Amber?
Well, I haven't seen at a personal level exactly what the workload is, but what I've been hearing for a long time is that the amount of time and work that it takes is perhaps more than was originally anticipated. And so not everybody can do that. And I think that compensation is a really powerful way to motivate people and to allow them to put in the time that a job like this really requires. So I don't know if what the current commensurate measurement is for how people are feeling, but I think that compensation is always a good way to motivate people and to get the right kind of talent that we want, because not everybody has the leisure to just give freely.
Thor?
This is a very much chicken and the egg question for me, but I think the main focus, you know, is rewarding. I don't want to say rewarding people that deserve it, but you know, there has to be some kind of reward system or incentive-based system where if you're having success and you're making things happen, then you kind of get rewarded. But we can't have that without having the incentive of getting paid to begin with. But I think the most important thing that we're dealing with is getting more people aware that there's even this grant thing to begin with, right? I think there's a lot of the cybercoin cryptocurrency ecosystem as a whole that doesn't even realize that they already respect Zcash, but I don't think they even know that the possibility that they can get a grant. So yeah, it would be great to be a paid time position. And I think that'll attract, more behaviors, that'll attract more people to apply for grants from all over the cryptoverse, so to speak. I had one other thought that I'm forgetting now, but do we think we should focus more on the core? Yeah, if you had a gun to my head, it would be the second part, reviewing grants and keep attracting a larger and diverse set of candidates. If I had to answer that question, it's a tough question. It's a great question, but I think the most important thing is attracting a very large, worldwide, diverse set of candidates who could spread the message of Zach.
Nice. So let's hear from Michael.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we talked about, and I would tend to agree with G Guy and Amber that this is important work, and we should be probably putting some effort into attracting the greatest talent. We got really lucky in that Hudson and Addie and Jason and Wobbs are like pretty self-actualized, like people of impeccable character, right? But we shouldn't count on getting lucky like that forever. And so I think that having the incentive to attract the best talent and people who care a lot and can put their all into it would probably be that better option. That said, things have gone okay up to now. But I would lean towards the compensation being greater and the responsibilities being acknowledged to be greater.
Jason?
Yeah, so it's true that ZCG is doing more with the RFPs, with the Global Ambassador Program, attending conferences and outreach. But I think it's important to remember that we have resources at our disposal, including the discretionary budget, which we can use to bring on administrative resources. We also have ZF, most notably Dan. And with the Global Ambassador Program, we've appointed Yodatar as our head ambassador, and he really manages the other ambassadors and helps organize activities. Something I feel strongly about, I don't think ZCG should be like a passive review committee that just reviews and approves grants. I think there's more that we can be doing, particularly with regard to increasing outreach and bringing more talent into the Zcash ecosystem. We talked about staggering elections 3-2, and one idea I think might be cool is for a future iteration of the grants program is having 3 seats being committee members who work the standard 15 hours per month, and then 2 members for, who work more like part-time, I guess. This way we'd be able to focus more on developer outreach, attracting high quality grant proposals, and we wouldn't have to preclude people from being committee members who have full-time jobs and can't commit more than the 15 hours per month. I'd personally be interested in running for one of the part-time seats. I think the need is there, and you'll definitely be able to find people to fill those seats. But overall, I think the question is one for the community. Like, we need to ask ourselves, and I'd like to see more conversation about this within the community, is what do we want to get out of the grants program? What do we want it to look like? In my opinion, the more you put into it, the more you get out. And if we want Zcash to be successful, we should continue to grow the program and to be more than just a passive committee.
Okay, finally on this question, Wobbs.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the sentiment that's been stated here. Once you're sitting on the committee and you read discussion on the forums and things like that, you definitely feel like the passion on the forums, people that want to see Zcash succeed, and you feel the pressure in the seat to want to do more than just, idly sitting and waiting for a grant to come by to approve or deny. I think one thing that Jason hit on that is an important point is, we have the forum is our closest gauge of sentiment currently that we have had for how active the committee should be. And I think that, maybe we need to revisit that and find a better way to, maybe leveraging the ZCAP or whatnot with an amendment to say, what is the expectation of the committee time wise, and maybe further refine some of the responsibilities, because I can tell you from sitting on the committee, you feel like you need to be doing more, and that's my opinion on it.
Okay. Next question, coincidentally, is from Wobbs. Do you think that the committee should have open, direct lines of communication with grant applicants for negotiating grants, deliverables, and providing feedback on proposals? Or, on the opposite end of the spectrum, should the committee simply provide yes/no decisions, or somewhere in between? Put simply, how important is and to what degree would you communicate with the applicant? Okay, let's hear from Thor on this one first.
Yeah, great question. I think traditionally most grants don't have this, and I think I would be for this. And it might not. There might be some negatives that I'm not thinking about, and if someone could tell me, and I might agree with them. But I think the more people can be on the same page, the better. The more open and honest and transparent people can be, the better off. You know, especially when we're working together as a community and an entire ecosystem. So I think it's important to communicate with the applicant, with the applicants, to know, you know, hey, this is how we're feeling. This is how the community's thinking. That might not be a good idea. That is a great idea, but a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. I would be open to, at the very least, testing this, and then seeing some case studies of other grant committees that may have used this approach, and the benefits that came with it, and maybe the negatives that came with it. But right now, I think this would be a good thing, because, you know, especially when someone's spending a lot of time putting a grant proposal together, and then they end up kind of falling flat or missing the mark, and they just never had any clue that they were, you know, totally out of bounds, so to speak. So I would be for this.
Next up, G Guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think while not compulsory, you know, there are some instances where it's not probably going to generate any constructive outputs by having more conversations. But yeah, I do absolutely think that direct lines of communications are good. It not only enhances our understanding of things, but also theirs. And hopefully that means we can encourage them to, you know, either pivot or move forward to bigger and better things and reapply for something else.
Okay, Amber.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Communication is always good, I guess, but it can be costly in terms of being time consuming. And in the applicant phase, I think there's a kind of balance, like on the one hand, if your proposal is really strong and well organized and very clear from the outset, that gives a kind of strong impression of the kind of work that you're going to do. On the other hand, there may be some cases where there's something that's of more particular interest to the committee or the community that we might be able to draw out by iterating on the original proposal. I'm thinking of a kind of parallel with the academic review situation, where people sometimes will have either acceptance or rejection, or revisions are asked for, right? And we could do some kind of phase like that, where we give someone a chance to elaborate on something or to make some change, in which case we might consider it again.
Okay, next up, Wobbs, who asked the question on the forums originally.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for this question. I think the answer is really, it depends, and it requires balance. On one hand, I think you can lose a lot of clarity and efficiency when you have to work through an intermediary to achieve a goal. So I think direct communication is important in that regard. But on the other hand, you know, there are not enough incentivized hours in the month for the committee to directly communicate with every applicant and still balance other critical aspects of their lives, like family and sustainable income streams and whatnot. So you really have to find the right balance. In our experience, we've opened more direct lines of communication in the case of larger grants because of the gravity of the importance of those decisions that we have to make. And so that's my opinion on that.
Michael.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. You know, the labor is a resource of its own. If we commit to talking to a grantee in person, it's 5 people on a call. It's a reasonable amount of man hours getting used up. But there are cases this year where I think it really paid off. We restructured how Free Disease legal budget was managed. and having ZF like manage it and custody it so it only is released as needed. I think that was a valuable tweak and kind of a new pioneering move. We talked to Zcash Media about their new distribution plan, and I'm glad we got to talk through that and think that through very thoroughly. It was a big grant. And most recently, Crypto Mondays, we talked to them about restructuring to like have a proof of concept milestone at the start before we commit to something larger. So in the case of bigger grants, I think it makes a lot of difference. And I think it's good to see someone in person, because let's be honest, forum posts don't really read as the friendliest thing on earth. And we're all trying to build relationships and build some trust. And from time to time, like face-to-face and human speech is the best way to do that. So for big grants, I absolutely think it's great for the ZCG to have a chat with the grantee.
Okay, Jason?
Yeah, so I think we should be actively involved in communicating with grant applicants throughout the grant process. Overall, I think more communication is always better than less communication. One area I think we can improve, where we can make it the process a little bit more efficient, is I think we could do more communication with applicants at the beginning of the process, especially on larger grants that require more of the applicant's time. Like some of these larger grants are pretty lengthy, like Mike brought up Zcash Media's last proposal, which was 17 pages long. I think we should have open direct lines of communication with grant applicants so that we can help the applicant determine if their proposal is within the scope of something that we're interested in funding, before they go through the trouble of doing all the work required to submit a proposal and then try to like sell it to the community. And I think that this is best achieved by, the applicant emailing us a summary of their proposal before, they take up the time to write a detailed proposal, setting up a call with us to discuss it. And it's really a better use of everyone's time, and it'll make the rest of the process much more efficient. We sort of already do it. Like we spoke to the Equilibrium team to let them know of a couple of projects where they might be able to put in a grant proposal. We also have plans to talk to NIM, to that team, and review a summary of their proposal before they formally submit it. But I think it would be good for the committee to better formalize that process. On the second part of the question, I think we should have direct lines of communication with grant applicants on negotiating grants and discussing deliverables. Like other people pointed out, like this means more work for committee members. But I do think that ZF can probably help out here, especially with regard to discussing the deliverables. I think overall more communication is better. We're trying to attract teams and developers to build on Zcash for the long term. So we should do everything in our power to make the grant process as enjoyable as a process, and strive to develop good, long-lasting relationships.
Okay, the next question is from Gotta Be Jay. What do you see as the governance role of ZCG in a more decentralized ecosystem? Do you think ZCG should one day be a fully independent third entity? So the context behind this is that currently the ZCG committee is primarily focused on approving or rejecting major grant applications. There has been talk of there potentially being a third entity in addition to the Electric Coin Company and the Zcash Foundation. And some people have suggested that ZCG could be spun out of the Zcash Foundation and established as a third entity. So let's hear first from Amber on this one.
So I'm aware that the centralization of governance has been a sore spot and a point of criticism for Zcash for a long time. And I think it's an important question, and I'm open to solutions and different ways of doing that. But to be honest, I don't really have a strong vision of what that could look like. And so I would just say that I'm open to entertaining different ideas of how that could be accomplished, and not close to it at all, but I don't really have a vision of how it would look.
Wobbs?
Yeah, like Amber, I think continuing down the path of decentralizing the community, I think is important. I think it's entirely possible that ZCG's funding source could one day be more decentralized. And if that day came, then I would support something like this. But ZCG currently exists to support the issuing of grants per ZIP 1014, and that states the foundation is to receive and administer those funds. So if the community eventually put forth and voted for an amended ZIP declaring that funding were somehow more decentralized and ZCG were to support that, I would totally support it. But in our capacity as members of the committee, I think the focus should be on issuing grants. And if the community wants to see something like that happen, then someone outside of ZCG should lead that effort.
Michael.
Yeah, I more or less agree with that. I think that it is really too bad that what you might see as the three decision-making branches of Zcash are all based in the United States. It's unfortunate, but it also can be temporary. I agree with Brian, though, that it's not our responsibility to build that structure, that entity. There's a ton of support that comes from ZF on the legal side, on the administrative side, on everything. So I think if anything, we could RFP something out and say like, hey, someone design a structure for ZCG to live unmoored from the United States. But it's not going to be something that I do, and it's a lot of hard work. It would be really cool if someone threw their hat in the ring and started to think about how this could be a reality.
Jason.
Yeah, so like other people said, I'd very much like to see the Zcash ecosystem become more decentralized than it currently is. But right now, the current structure for ZCG is working. I think the Zcash Foundation does an excellent job supporting us, and we're able to review and approve grants in an efficient manner. I don't think it's realistic for ZCG to immediately become independent as a third entity, just given the way the committee is currently structured. Also, our budget's very limited and distressed in this crypto bear market. And we also don't know if ZCG is going to continue to receive its allocation of the dev fund after the next halving. I mean, my main point is these changes can't happen overnight. Like, you need to sort of crawl, walk, run. But that's not to say that I don't think somewhere down the line, it would make sense for ZCG to be a fully independent third entity. I think the community may support that measure, but it's a big undertaking. You're essentially creating a whole separate organization with its own corporate docs and bylaws that would need full-time employees, separate from the ZCG committee members themselves. So it'll take some time to get there. What I would like to see is ZCG gradually be given more independence and autonomy. I think ZOMG had their hands tied and couldn't get the support they needed to do certain things they wanted to do. So we introduced the discretionary budget, which gave ZCG the ability to do more, like attend conferences, promote the grants program, and hire contractors to support our efforts. I hope that trend continues. Each committee should iterate on the program and get a bit more independence to make itself more efficient and effective. And that's really how you grow an organization. And I think that's like the most realistic path towards independent, if that's what the community wants to see.
Thor.
Yeah, I think this sounds great on paper, and I think eventually this would be very cool. My concern would be, there's a reason that majority of the world didn't invest from 2008 to 2011, because everything was so too decentralized and kind of scary for the common people. And if we're talking about adoption and getting more eyes on the prize and more people involved, I think you need that balance. Like someone said earlier, balance is so key in this space. And that's one of the things that attracted me and many others to Zcash and ECC was that balance, where we have to make it easier for people, not a little challenging. As much as we love decentralization and being on our own and independent, there's still a very large population who's yet to adopt crypto. And in these next few years, when they start to rush in, you kind of want to make it as comfortable and trusting as process. You need that bridge. You need a plane to get from here to Paris. You need a bridge to get to New York from New Jersey. Without those things, people are left to their own vices. And to me, the downside of that would be less adoption and less eyes coming in. So that's my answer there.
Okay, G Guy.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I guess I don't know what it means when you say, what do you see as the government's role of ZCG in a more decentralized ecosystem? If by that we're talking about a future where there are more entities in the ecosystem rather than ECC, ZF, and the Zcash grants, then yeah, I think it's I think that in a way is the goal, that one of the goals that ZCG is working towards, creating more entities in the ecosystem, making things more decentralized, and yeah, making that more prosperous, I guess, in that world, I imagine. With regards to making ZCG fully independent, as everybody's pointed out, yeah, of course, it's a really big undertaking, really high cost, really whatever else it is to actually do that and follow through with it. But I don't think we just have to say, oh, too hard sometime in the future. I think that there's lots of things we could start doing now to kind of work towards more independence and more self-autonomy and all those sorts of things like that. Like, there's no reason why we couldn't split off, you know, with agreement with the community and everything else. We could split off a portion of the dev funds to be controlled by ZCG members or some form of membership candidacy type thing. You know, because we're moving towards a future where we might decide, for example, to direct fund credit. And if we were to do that, how would we manage that? Do we need the funds to go directly through ZF, or do we want the funds to come directly to ZCG and then get dispersed to credit, or do we just go directly to credit? So I think there's a lot of things that we can do that I guess do make things more independent from a financial perspective, and then we gradually move towards that end goal where I think it probably would be a good thing for ZCG to be fully independent, but we're not there yet.
Okay, the next question is another one from Wobbs. Imagine you're faced with a 7-figure grant proposal for a team of builders. The proposal has caused some contention on the forum. There's no surprise there. And the grant is not amenable to a majority of the committee. However, you think that the proposal would positively benefit the Zcash community, but you are in the minority. Explain how you would respond to this situation within the committee, the community, and with the applicant. And let's start off with Wobbs.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this question because you know, if you're thinking about ways that the committee could potentially be more efficient, one of the ways you could go about doing that is by simply you know, approving or denying grants and providing a little bit of feedback. But how much feedback you provide and how much communication you perform with applicants and about that particular grant, you know, everybody has different opinions on how that should be managed. So me personally, I don't think that the answer, you know, the conversation should end with, you know, the committee voted no. I think that, you know, everyone wants progress in this ecosystem. If the committee should discuss things together and see if this team of builders is somebody that they think could potentially do good work for the community. And then there should be a discussion primarily within the committee and with the applicant first to find common ground on, okay, we don't like this full proposal. What are some of the things that we do like? And what are some of the things that we don't like? What are some of the things that the applicant wants to do, because ultimately it's their decision, and we value them as people who are contributing to the ecosystem. And then you communicate with the community on an updated proposal after you're able to come to some sort of agreement. The challenge here, the biggest challenge here is this is a big effort, you know, for a large grant to renegotiate all of these issues, and it's tough and it's not enjoyable for the applicants. So I know and I appreciate that, and I hope that if reelected and we come across situations like that, we can figure out ways to maybe help improve this situation. You know, Jason brought up good ideas about communicating about large grants before the full proposal is actually submitted. I think that's a great idea. You know, put simply though, I don't think the answer is a hard no. I think a lot of communication and coordination is involved.
Now let's hear from Thor next.
Yeah, this is a great one. I think the first thing I would do is say, why am I wrong here? Because I'm in a room, I'm not in a room full of dumb people. I'm in a room of very intelligent people that I respect. So the first thing I would say is like, what am I missing? What do I have wrong here, right? And then I would ask everybody, well, what am I missing? And then I would kind of come with my argument, and still after that, if I still thought I was right and adamant, I would express myself that, hey, this is what you guys are missing, or start asking questions. Well, if we did this, what would happen in the future here? You know, it's a lot of hypothetical. Whenever we get ourselves in these kind of stalemates, or you know, we have disagreements, A, it's important to be super respectful and humble and tolerable, but B, to say, hey, you know, let's think long game here. Is there a world where this can be a home run? And if so, what will that look like? And what would it take for this to work? So to really answer the question, in conclusion, I would express myself, you know, and start a healthy debate of, you know, how can we make this thing work? And what am I missing, and why am I wrong? And if I'm not wrong, let's talk about hypotheticals and end game situations. And then I would brainwash everyone into thinking that I'm right, and we would do it.
If anybody can do that, it's you, Thor. Amber.
I should probably take a humility lesson from Thor, because that's not what I would have thought in the first place at all. So I guess we're talking about being in a situation where I'm looking at the people I'm looking at right now, and I'm in the minority. I'm not a stranger to being in the minority, but I guess I would want to really, if I've really felt strongly about it, to make a really good case for why I thought that what was being proposed would be really important. I mean, I think originally the committee was supposed to be real major grants, so this isn't a, you know, just a hypothetical situation. I like Wobbs's idea of early communication, so that the situation maybe doesn't arise so much in the first place. But I also like the idea of, you know, if I'm really faced with a situation where it feels like we're not able to preserve some value, it's like all or nothing, I'm going to lose something that I think is really valuable. It would be nice, I think, if we could encourage proposals to have a kind of iterative structure, so that, you know, maybe there's some way that we could have a proposal that we try something, and if that much works, then we develop it further, instead of having a kind of all or nothing proposal. I mean, the flip side of that is that some people don't want to work on something unless they know that we're going to make a big commitment to them. So I guess I probably need more experience in this situation.
G guy.
Yeah, this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to being a member of a committee. I've done that in my professional life, and thinking everyone else is insane because they don't understand what you understand. Pretty normal for me. But the way that I always view every conversation that I have is, if I have a disagreement with somebody and we are of equal intelligence, I'm going to be wrong, statistically speaking, 50% of the time. If I'm part of a board where there's 5 members, I'm one of them, and everyone else disagrees with me, I'm going to be wrong 80% of the time. So I think for one, exactly what Thor said. In that situation, considering myself an intelligent person, I think, what am I missing? There's a piece of this puzzle that I must be missing. The fact that there's a big mismatch between my views and somebody else's views. So I always like to understand people's views and all the information that they have available to them, to kind of understand the reasoning behind and the logic behind what they've done. But essentially speaking, what would I do with regards to Thingo? I'm a pretty outspoken person, so I'd let my views be known. I'll try to make sure everybody else has all the information that I have available to them when they're making their decisions or having their opinions. And I think, yeah, once the decision's been made, it's been made. Like we were saying before, I think communication's a really good thing. So if there is a situation where we I think there could be still value in what's been proposed. Open communication is a really good idea, and kind of try and swing that into something that's viable, whether or not that's during the process or we have to close it and look for a resubmission. That's another option too.
Jason.
All right, so the first part of this question reminds me a lot of the Zcash Media Grant. I think if you're in the minority, you should first understand why the committee wants to reject it. And then second, work with the committee and the applicant to negotiate the proposal into something everyone's comfortable with. If you use Zcash Media as an example, I think that might mean, less videos to lower the cost, or reducing the marketing and distribution element of it to bring down the cost. I definitely think it's possible to find a compromise on many of these grant proposals, where the committee and the community are split. It's just a matter of putting in the time and effort to get there. Not everything has to be a blanket, like approve, reject. As far as after the decision is made, so there was this small grant proposal called Zcash DeFi, where the applicant was asking ZCG to see liquidity for Renzec on the DeFi platform, on a DeFi platform. And, there's not a lot of demand for Renzec, and there's some security issues with a lot of these platforms. So the majority of the committee wanted to reject it. The proposal didn't receive much engagement on the forum, but I hear a lot of traders and other ZEC holders who want to see ZEC on more DeFi platforms. So, I sort of thought it deserved more attention and discussion before rejecting it. So what I did is I sort of wrote up a statement that was included in the meeting minutes that was sort of like a dissent, where I communicated to the committee, the community, the applicant, that I didn't think we should reject this now, that DeFi is an important part of the crypto ecosystem, and the proposal deserves more discussion and consideration for both the community and committee. I think that's all you can do. I think you're on a committee with 5 people, and you're not always going to be in the majority. Yeah.
And finally, Michael.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think we had this happen a few times. I'm not sure if I was ever the advocate, but I am no stranger to being wrong. I think everyone has acknowledged that. I think Thor said that. G Guy said that. We've all been wrong at some point in our life, and if we disagree, I very often say this, and people don't like it as much as I would expect them to. But I say, I don't agree with you. You might be right. We'll find out. Right. I would have expected that to go over better than it always does, but people seem to get very angry when I say that. But that would basically be my attitude is, I'd advocate for the project. Sure, compromise, maybe it needs to scale down. But at the end of the day, you take the L, you move on, and you find out if you were right or not. That's just how life goes. Additionally, it's not a closed door forever. A no on a grant is not a closed door forever. Token price could go up, sentiment could shift, everything could change, never can feel different next year. So just never say never, right?
Okay, well, the next question is again from Wobbs, but Wobbs put a bunch of questions on the forum, and they all got upvoted quite a lot. What are your thoughts on the ethics and efficiency or inefficiency of having private conversations, and I assume by that you mean one-on-one conversations, with grantees about proposals or grants, and disclosure of said conversations with the committee? And let's start off with Michael on this one.
Sure. This is a good question, and it's a tricky one to answer on a practical level because we're in an age of private digital money and end-to-end encrypted chat programs. So if someone wants to have a private chat, they can, right? I think they should disclose. I think that's absolutely how things should go, but I don't think there's any guarantee for it. So I think it's really tough to pin this one down because yeah, I totally think they should disclose a one-on-one chat. But if anything secretive was going on, I certainly wouldn't expect it to happen. So it's a tricky question. There is efficiency, of course, in a one-on-one conversation, but I think you should always loop someone in just because, if you have a private conversation, people are going to wonder what was said. I had some other point. Let me see if it'll come to me quickly. I'm afraid it's escaped me. Thanks.
Jason.
So I interpreted this question a little bit differently. So just to give some background, there was this, again, with Zcash Media, right, on their thread, where they hosted a couple public calls to gauge community sentiment around their grant proposal. And a couple of people on the forum started asking ZCG to make all their meetings and discussions public. And they said that not doing so violated like our transparency requirements or, the basic principles of transparency. I have a strong opinion here because, I think transparency is super important. However, transparency does not require ZCG's calls with prospective or current grantees to be made public to the community. We have calls all the time and rarely, if ever, record and post them. We do, however, communicate key takeaways and decisions in our biweekly minutes or on the relevant forum post. A good example is a recent call we had with Taylor Hornby about his second milestone as an ecosystem security lead. We memorialized the conversation in our meeting minutes and then also asked Taylor to write a status update on the forum to communicate it to the community. I personally think we do a great job with transparency. Every meeting we have, every decision we make is memorialized in our biweekly meeting minutes, posted to the forum. I'm all for the occasional meeting being public, especially because we value and encourage community feedback. But public meetings should be the exception rather than the rule. And the primary reason for that is because it would just create a huge operational burden to record, edit, post all the meetings. We already do more work than the required 15 hours per month. And there'd be a lot of work required to maintain that level of transparency. And it would take away from our core responsibility, which is, bringing new teams into the ecosystem to build on top of Zcash. Lastly, just from that thread, I sort of felt like it felt like total micromanaging. At the end of the day, the community elected us to run the grants program, and I think we should be able to run it efficiently and be trusted to relay key information and details about our decisions, in the established transparency reports.
G Guy.
Yeah, so I read this as a one-on-one meeting situation. I absolutely think that, well, at least in the committees and my experience that I've had in the past, they're super constructive. You can sometimes iron out these questions that you can go on discussing the ages in a ZCG meeting, for example. 5 minutes of clarity in a private conversation and you're all good to go. I think that they're great. They should be encouraged. If we are worried about these private conversations and making them a bit more official in committees that I've worked for in the past, applicants or applications get assigned primary and secondary members to be the ones to drive that forward, and often they're the ones that end up being the ones to communicate privately with those applicants. So there's lots of ways we can manage it. I think we can become a lot more efficient by not having to require 5 members of the committee on every single call with every single applicant. Whether or not that happens now, I don't know. And yeah, so I think it's a good thing. I think, as everyone was saying, disclosure is probably pretty important. I think that's in almost, I can't think of any circumstances where you shouldn't disclose it. So I think we should always encourage people to disclose those conversations. But as others have said, if people want private conversations, they can, but we should hold ZCG members accountable for that. And if they do want to do that and it is found out about them, it's kind of like, well, why? That doesn't make sense. I don't know if that's what we want ZCG members to be doing.
Amber.
Yeah, I read that the same way as G Guy, and I have the same view that it could be an efficiency if a grantee wants to hop on a call with one member instead of gathering everybody together and explaining something that can be then represented to the committee and conveyed to the committee. Then I think that's a win for everybody, and I don't really envision anything nefarious coming out of it.
Wobbs.
Yeah, so I think it's natural for people to want to have direct communication for a variety of reasons. One thing to consider, though, is one of the core ethos of this industry is don't trust and verify. So it's complicated when a committee member brings information from a private conversation to the group, whether that be due to trust or understanding motives or lack of clear understanding. I don't have an issue with direct communication honest, open, and clear communication begets trust within the committee and the community, which begets the ability to engage in constructive communication and negotiation on completed or complicated grants, which begets progress for the community. So throughout this year, we've made conscious efforts to either request that grantees update the community on our direct conversations and or include details of those conversations in official meeting minutes. And I didn't initially intend this question to be about private conversations with grant applicants versus having all committee conversations open on the forum or minuted, et cetera. But I'm glad Jason brought that up because I agree with a lot of the points that he stated there.
Thor.
Yeah, I think it's ironic that all of us privacy advocates are having such transparent talk, and I think it's important to have that balance. I think it's when you're creating a culture and a climate and an environment, you don't want things to be hidden. You don't want things to be in the shadows. I think that's where a lot of toxic emotions come from, and he said, she said, or they said, or whoever said. But if enough people have a problem with something in a community, whether I agree with it or not, then it's a problem, right? And then it's like, well, how do we solve that problem? How do we make, you're never going to make everyone happy, but if enough people are expressing themselves that this is an issue, it probably is an issue for the overall benefit of the ecosystem and the community, right? Because either way, if you just say, oh, okay, let's not listen to the majority of people who have a problem, then you're going to have a lot of angry members in your community. So with this question, I would say, hey, yeah, it's inefficient to have a private conversation. And yeah, we should create a place where you can speak what's on your mind, for better or worse, and you're not going to be judged or ostracized or made fun of, or, it's very important in a family, in a community, in a tribe to always speak what's on your mind, for better or worse, without being toxic and and mean to people, so to speak. So private Zcash, let's have a transparent public conversation in the committee.
Okay, the next question is from Ari. Ari is one of the community members whose term is expiring at the end of this year, and they're the only person whose term is expiring who has chosen not to run. And the reason for that is because they want to get back to working on Nighthawk Wallet, which is a project that they lead and have received grants for in the past. They ask, when discussing and voting on grants, the ZCG committee members have various opinions and evaluation criteria. How does your background help with the committee's discussion? Are you outspoken with your views? Do you vote with popular opinion in the community, or consider the long-term impact and viability of a proposed grant? So let's start with Amber.
I think my greatest strengths are actually less specific and more about enthusiasm and sincerity, but I am, for better or for worse, quite outspoken normally. And in terms of background, I think that I do have actually a long-term vision that's based and rooted in the kind of, as I already mentioned, cypherpunk values that go way back. And I think that my computer science training gives me an ability to evaluate things from the perspective of long-term kind of technical protocol kinds of evaluation that I'm hoping I will be able to bring to the committee.
G-Guy.
Yeah, so I think my background in IT, software engineer primary, I've dabbled in almost all programming languages that I see existing in the ecosystem today. I've done a little bit of project management type work, pretty outspoken. Yeah, so I think there's a lot that I can bring in terms of my experience. And what was the rest of the question? Just reread that question. Long-term impact of grants proposed. Oh yeah, okay. So popular opinion of the grants. So I think that it's beneficial for all ZCG members to bring the experience that they have, and let everybody know what they think, and bring those experiences, because that's what we want. We elect these members because we think that they're going to be great. They have experience, they have knowledge, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's really important for them to express their views and opinions on everything, and therefore probably vote the way that they see they should vote.
Jason.
So my professional background's been focused on finance and accounting. Overall, I'm a very process-oriented person. At my last job, I developed just a ridiculous amount of policies, procedures, controls around everything we did, from transferring cash and settling securities to risk management, portfolio P&L reporting. So this very much guides the way I think about things. I'm good at seeing the big picture, developing a plan or process, and executing on the plan until the objective is reached. I think I'm a effective communicator, and I can generally be pretty organized. Regarding being outspoken, I think I'm pretty outspoken with my views, especially if it's something I feel strongly about. A good example of this was with the Y-Wallet grant, because I thought Han really deserved to receive a retroactive grant for all the hard work that he put into Y-Wallet and the value it brought to the community. I try not to be outspoken about everything, though. I can give an example here. There's some grants where I feel sort of indifferent, and a good example was this recent grant called Spicy Punks, which for the 5 of us, which was for 5 meetups in India. And I let the committee know that I could see good reasons for and against it, but I didn't really push hard for a specific outcome. Regarding community sentiment, I think it's very important. I spent a lot of time on the forum reading everyone's comments, and I would really like to encourage the community to provide even more constructive feedback. I do think that community sentiment is just one input that goes into the decision-making process. And I said this before, at the end of the day, the community has elected us to make decisions on how to allocate ZCG's funds. So the decisions are ultimately up to us. The community's feedback is just one input. And then the accountability mechanism are these elections. I want to say that I think what's made the current committee so successful is that we're all very respectful of each other's views. We take time to listen and understand each other. We have very, very constructive conversations, and we don't always agree with each other. We often don't agree with each other. And I think another thing that's helped is, we're all active community members who want to put a lot of time and hard work into the program to make sure we're making good decisions and doing the best for the grants program.
Michael.
Yeah, so my background, I'm a software developer. I do full stack database utility bill stuff. Super boring, but it's good. It's cool. But it's given me the skill set to, and I know high level about how blockchain software and wallets work. So the cool thing about that is I can go to the meeting with Taylor, and he walks us through his executive summary of his security audit, and I follow it pretty well, which feels good. So to that end, I've got enough of the knowledge to follow at a high level what's going on with some of the technical stuff, but I'm not a cryptographer. I'm not super high level or anything like that. Am I outspoken with my views? I think yeah, it is what it is. When I think it's productive, especially if we funded, this is totally hypothetical, right? So don't go picking through and figure out what I'm talking about. 100% hypothetical. If we funded a smaller grant and they produced something and I didn't think it was great, I'm not gonna go to bat and tell everyone that I think it stinks, right? I will be outspoken when it's productive and it's important, and I'll pick my battles on that front. But I think if you go back through the minutes, you can find some stout opinions that are coming out of me, and I plan to continue in that vein.
Thor.
So how does my background help with the committee's discussion? I've been on a lot of teams, starting early ages in sports, college sports, then working on many different sets and CEOs, politicians, production companies. I've been in a lot of rooms, a lot of meetings, and I'm used to this, and I take pride in winning. And part of my background is knowing a lot of people and kind of being a master connector and master builder. I know a lot of people from different worlds, and kind of pride myself on making connections and, you know, spreading messages, one being Zcash. So my background of all these different worlds I'm in, you know, from MTV to the White House to the United Nations to, you know, to an all-star baseball game sitting in the dugout, you know, I have a very wide reach. And I've been right a few times before where inside this wide reach, people now come back to me and are listening. Oh, you know, like in 2014, I told everyone to get a YouTube account and it's going to be bigger than TV. And if they got an account, you know, they're going to be famous. These people now come back and like, well, what do you have now? You know, like we're listening, you know, and YouTube, there are many different examples of stuff like that. So that part of my background, I think, will help a lot to strengthen, you know, the missing link of the technical side, where I'm not a cryptographer and I have a lot to learn, but I'm also very hungry, and because I'm a rookie level, I want to learn more of the tech side. So I've surrounded myself with a lot of tech savvy friends who I'm constantly leaning into and learning from. And then voting with the popular opinion, I've always been the opposite of that. I've always kind of been the contrarian. But like I said earlier, if enough people have a problem with something in a community, you gotta listen to it and pay attention. But I am thinking long term, and that's what's led me to Zcash in the first place. You know, and people make the jokes of the pain if you've been a long time investor and how much pain you've gone through. I don't really look at it as pain, because going in, I wasn't thinking 2-3 years. And it took me a little bit in the beginning when I first invested in Zcash in 2018, early 2018, I literally spent every day on Twitter on the search function, searching Zcash and $ZEC, because I just wanted to see what everyone was saying. And like, did I make a bad decision here? And I saw over the years how like the commentary like changed. At first, it was just like kind of all bots doing prices and trading stuff. And we've come a long way and I tell people like Twitter search function to me is like the real Google, right? Because if you search something on Google, that first page is kind of BS now. But if you search something on Twitter and you hit that latest button, you're literally getting what someone said about Zcash 30 seconds ago. And you can do that all day long. And for better or worse, that's a habit of mine. Maybe because I've invested so much money in Zcash, but I like to watch it all day long. So in a nutshell, I've invested in Zcash for a 5, 10, 15, 20, like for my children, you know, and for the future of the world, not kind of for this short-term monetary gain, although it would be nice. I'm very much thinking long-term with Zcash, and I've explained it a lot to the community and to even, you know, I've gotten a lot of people to invest in Zcash. They're not on Twitter, some very high net worth individuals as well. And luckily for me, I kind of always told them, like, this is not going to be a get rich quick scheme. It might be, you might hit a profitable number quick and get lucky, and maybe you'll take some profits, but this is a 5-10 year thing. And it reminds me of that tweet Zuko had with Naval, where it takes 10 years, you know, and these are guys who have been investing in companies and startups for a very long time. And that's what I was saying to everyone who said, we need to do more marketing and you need to pay for marketing. And it's like, well, look at FTX. Look how much they just paid for marketing and look at where they're at now. So like, yes, you want eyes to be on you, but what's the point? You know, if you have a bad food product, you want it at the cash register, right? Because people are just going to buy junk anyway. This is something that has to be great, you know, first. It has to be usable. And that's why I created that meme of Zcash and Bitcoin with the tortoise and the hare. And Zcash is the hare, the turtle coming across, and Bitcoin is the hare. Sorry, I got that wrong. Zcash is I have an airplane going on, but Zcash is the tortoise. And to me, Bitcoin is the hare. And I think a lot of people got into Bitcoin for the wrong reasons. And majority of people I speak to in the real world, they have no clue that Bitcoin is a public ledger. And it's time we tell them. Cool.
Yeah, let's hear from Wobbs next.
Hey everyone. So with my background, I'm not a cryptographer, I'm not a software developer, but these fields have definitely been adjacent to the things that I've worked on in the information security field. One of the goals that I had coming into this committee for 2022 was to see more focus be given to the security efforts around Zcash and auditing. So we early on we identified that within RFPs, but we sort of got lucky when Taylor decided that he wanted to leave ECC and start working on this stuff full time for the community. So I was very excited about that, very passionate about that. Let's see, in terms of being outspoken, I like to think that I can be outspoken when necessary, but I also like to take time to listen and reflect on others' opinions. I think it's really important to balance that, which leads to kind of the follow-up question about voting with popular opinion or consideration of long-term, impact of grants. I personally think it would be foolish to think that I 100% know what's best for Zcash long-term. So there is some element of considering the opinion of the community that I value. And we have a lot of talented members in this community that know more than I do. So I value that and I weigh their opinions in addition to my own.
Okay. Well, our last question comes from Kofefe. Are there any specific areas of the Zcash ecosystem that you are particularly interested in, passionate about supporting through ZCG? And let's start off with Jason.
Okay, so I'll talk about two things here. First, at a project level, I'd like to see more grants focused on education. For example, video explainers on what's a zero knowledge proof, or how does Zcash work under the hood, or what's Zcash's governance model and how does it work? There's this channel on YouTube called Finematics, and they do all sorts of whiteboard style explainers that have animations. And yeah, I think these sorts of educational resources would not only be a resource to people who are new to Zcash, but they'll also help like current community members as well who want to learn more about, like evolve a deeper understanding of Zcash. I'm bringing this up because I feel like we did a lot in 2022, but this was something that we didn't focus enough on. So I hope 2023 it's a priority within the committee. The other thing I'm super passionate about is this idea of investing in people, not projects. So we've now developed, like into our second year of the program, we've now developed relationships with a number of different entities that deserve more independence and autonomy, and that shouldn't be tied to like the current milestone-based grant structure. Examples include Equilibrium, who does Ziggurat, Kedit, Zcash Media, Han from YWallet, and Adi from Nighthawk. I think these are teams that are long-term players in the Zcash ecosystem, and I really want to see them be well capitalized so that they stick around for the long term. So in 2023, I'd like to see one or two of these organizations or individuals apply for a grant to support their team, and it not be tied to the delivery of any particular project or milestone. I think that overall this will make the teams more creative and productive. And then what this would ultimately lead to is it would be a path for them to apply to receive funding under the direct grant option, where a small percentage of ZCG's allocation of the dev fund goes directly to support their efforts. And this is how we decentralize the ecosystem and how we decentralize the dev fund.
Wobbs.
Yeah, so I think it's really difficult to nail down any one particular area of Zcash that I am super passionate about, because there are so many areas of Zcash that I am extremely excited about. There are things ranging from Zcash shielded assets to one day we're going to be able to put shielded Zcash on our Trezor. or ledger device and start, growing the shielded pools. And I think education and outreach are super important. That's why we have the Global Ambassador Program. I think that program should continue on. I guess if there's one thing that I could really focus in on within the next year is how can we as a committee and a community focus on generating more positive feedback loops in our ecosystem? How can we encourage developers to generate feedback loops within the applications that they're using, be more open and interactive with the community, taking in feedback? How can we as a committee enable the community to give requirements to the committee for things that, gaps that are seen within the community, things that need to be worked on, RFPs that need to be generated, so that we can actually get some more traction within the community and then start building out even more and growing even more. So I think, if there's anything that I could work on within the next year and focus on, I think it would be that.
Michael.
Yeah, biggest thing really is getting big wins under our belt in terms of decentralizing to large organizations, right? We talk about how hard it is to decentralize like ZCG out of the United States. Well, we could at least figure out some large organization that plays a large role that is receiving funds and maybe eventually hits the direct grant option, which is good. But to be more interesting, I will talk about how passionate I am about new use cases and making it usable for a normal person. For me, I really clicked on Zec when I donated to WikiLeaks and I looked at the block explorer and I thought about how like, whoa, this is different, right? Zec pages, you make an anonymous post and you go, well, this isn't different. You get an anonymous post and read it and you say, this is different. It's something in your hands that's usable. Someone very recently made an interesting post on Zec pages where they provided a message that was signed with a tatter, and they pointed out that so you could sign with a tatter, and if it's in the same UA as a sapling, you can prove ownership of the sapling address. And then at that point, you could do something like login with Zec, which would be a usability nightmare in the current implementation, right? You have to sign something and get it all going together. But one could probably figure out a really slick, light wallet, invisible way that this works for everyone. So I'm really excited about novel use cases and then actually getting a human being to run it on their computer or phone and think like, wow, this is happening.
Thor.
Yeah. I think my biggest passion and interest right now is I keep thinking of getting the inner cities involved and third world countries and the world and making it cool and creating a buzz. Zcash is really cool, and it bothers me when I go into certain cities and hang with certain of my friends and their Dogecoin and their meme coin and their Shiba Inu, and they've got their phone out and they're really just wanting to make money, right? That's their introduction to crypto. And then when I tell them about Zcash, 99.999% of the time, a light bulb goes off in their head of like, wait a minute, this is public and everyone can see what I'm doing. Oh, that makes total sense, right? But it wasn't until someone told them that they trusted and associated with that the level. So my real passion here is going into the inner cities and making this a cool thing for the youth for Gen Z and earlier, where they're going to be looking at Zcash kind of in the same way and see the bigger picture, where I kind of keep saying it's flavor of the week and the mixtape generation, where it's like, okay, that was last month's CD. Like, what do you have this month? That's not the way people should be looking at crypto and cybercoin. So my real passion is spreading Zcash to this quote unquote population that's going to get left behind, right? There's going to be this boom, a financial boom, and people are saying, well, there's a whole wealth gap here, and there's going to be a lot more haves and a lot more have-nots. I think preventative medicine, we have to really position ourselves in the Zcash community to make sure the quote unquote have-nots are not going to get left behind in this next bull run when it comes, when there's a privacy narrative, you know, because then people are going to be saying, well, oh, I didn't know about this and this isn't fair, you know, and they're going to be thinking just in monetary denominations of the price of the coin. So it's important we make this cool and get a buzz going for the people that are thinking about getting left behind in this whole cryptocurrency boom that we're all about to experience and have been experiencing.
G guy.
Yeah, so if you've seen me typing away or something like that, it's because I've got COVID at the moment and my brain's a bit fuzzy, so I'm just trying to keep track of my thoughts. Yeah, so I think some really good points were made. Direct funding, I think that's extraordinarily important. It is kind of what I was talking about before about decentralization of finances, I guess you could say. Yeah, very big advocate at a high level to do some direct funding, and whether or not at some stage in the future we go so far as to make those funds not even touch a ZF or ZCG wallet, I think that's really good. I also am really keen on unique applications and how we can make that usable for actual users, like Zemo, for example. I was a big supporter of that. I think there's a lot of innovation that we can do, and you know, we kind of don't know some of these use cases and some of these future ideas and what the future is going to look like. So I think it's really important for us to explore those. I also think education, extraordinarily important. I recently clipped the Zcash media video, the section on zero knowledge proofs, and I presented that to almost 100 people. And I didn't get asked any questions about how does this work after presenting that video, because it was enough for them to gather it's viable and it makes sense, and whether or not they completely understood zero knowledge proofs, it was enough to get them over the board to say, oh, this isn't just a scam, this is something that's real. I also got a lot of user feedback on user experience through that experience, because I, you know, explained how we could use it for payments, and I got a lot of feedback just talking about, well, you know, how do I get ZEC to begin with? You know, what are the tax implications of that? That actually question came up quite a lot, and I didn't think about that beforehand. And you know, some of the feedback was, well, hold on, this is harder than cash. I can get my cash out of my wallet quicker than I can make a payment. Why is that? Is it because it's hard for them to get ZEC in the first place? Is it because the wallets need to be a little bit more fine-tuned to make things really quick? So yeah, there's lots we can explore there, but those are my key things that I'd like to really advocate for.
And finally, Amber.
Yeah, I have two, and I'm going to be basically echoing Michael and G Guy here. The first one is about adoption, and it's not making adoption happen per se, because I think that works in mysterious ways and we don't necessarily have predictability or control. But what I really want for Zcash is readiness for an adoption windfall. And I think that means we have to have usability. Every extra step that it takes to make a transaction happen is like an exponentially bad thing. We've got to reduce friction there. And then education is also important, so that if something suddenly draws a lot of attention to Zcash, people need a place to go where they can have their questions answered. And so I really want to prioritize being ready for that. And the other thing is the kind of innovative, creative side. I think there are a lot of things that could be explored, and it really excites me when I see new ways of using Zcash. So like ZEC pages and Zemo, I think are really interesting ideas, and I always get excited when I see stuff like that, because I don't think we can necessarily predict where the technology will take us, and sometimes something new like that can really be a driving force.
Okay, well, we've been going for 90 minutes, or about the same length of time as a game of football or soccer if you live in the US. So I'm going to blow the final whistle and ask the candidates for their final words, starting with Wobbs.
Thanks. So yeah, I just want to reiterate why I'm here and also give appreciation. So G Guy hit on something early on in our conversation today about one day there's going to be an AI chat GPT where you're just going to be able to identify everything about anybody in particular that you want at the type of a keyboard. So I have two small children, and I want to think about their future, and Zcash gives me hope for my children, that they can retain privacy, that enables individual autonomy, self-ownership, and dignity. So I'm really passionate about Zcash. I think that has a lot of potential long-term. And so finally, I just want to give thanks to everyone. Thanks for entrusting me, throughout 2022 to be a committee member. I've thoroughly enjoyed working on this committee. There's been a lot of challenges that we've faced this year. I've certainly grown myself and learned a lot from the other committee members. And thank you to everyone that is running this year, all the other committee members that are running this year. It's great to see excitement around Zcash and the governance process. It feels totally different than it did this time last year. And also thanks to the Zcash Foundation for supporting us, and to the ECC for all the awesome work that they do. So that's it.
Jason.
I just want to say I've really enjoyed my time on the committee. I learned a lot. I think we had a great year. We approved a number of high quality grant proposals. We launched the Global Ambassador Program. We published and filled the majority of our RFPs. And I think we helped improve the organizational efficiency of the program, a large part thanks to the support provided by the Zcash Foundation. I'm excited to continue to work hard and as a committee member and make this program great. Let's keep it going and make 2023 even better than 2022. I also want to say that I'm really impressed with the candidates running, all of them. And I think no matter who wins, the grants program will be in good hands. So good luck, everyone.
Michael.
Hey, thanks to everyone for listening and caring. Thanks to everyone on this call for caring enough to stand for ZCG and put yourself out there. Shout out to Angst and Zcash KR, who couldn't be here, but it still means a lot that they threw their hats in the ring. Yeah, thanks to everyone who trusted me to sit on ZCG this year. I hope I did you proud. There's a lot of work left to do. If I get elected again, I will continue to give it my best. Thank you all.
G-Guy.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to be here. I, have really good views of, and I think Zcash is going to go a long way. I look forward to the future. I think differentiator for me, I guess you could say, why might you vote for me? I think it's important for us not to be scared to invest now. I know everyone talks about the downturn in ZEC and all those things like that. But I think the curve of growth for Zcash is going to be exponential. So every little bit that we do now, it may seem like we're spending a lot of money, it may seem like we're doing all these things. Every little bit that we do now is going to pay exponential dividends in the future. So if we can invest now and build up Zcash now, it means that when the future comes and what mass adoption of cryptocurrencies in general and the ideas that we stand for happen, and people start looking at privacy as a really important thing, which again is going to happen when AI start doxing everyone, because you can just ask it the question, who is so-and-so, and it's going to happen in a few years. It's going to become incredibly important, and we need to have started investing now for that future. Thanks.
Thor.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. And thanks to everyone watching and all the past committee members. I think a final word for me, I would love to be a standing member on the grants committee of Zcash. I've been an unofficial member of this ecosystem for a while now, and I would love to make it official and start taking it a lot more serious. And like G-Guy and Michael, just said, bear markets are the time to build. And not only have we invested financially in this coin, but we're investing our time. And I think that there's people out there who might not have the money to invest. Well, right now is the time to invest your time, and it'll pay off big time. Just by us participating now, you know, we're making a bet on ourselves, and that's the most important investment you can make is on yourself. So I would love to be on the grants committee and continue to keep fighting the good fight and spreading ZEC to the world. Power to the people.
And finally, Amber.
Well, thank you all for this opportunity. I'm really excited about the possibility of working on the grants. I feel a lot of idealism for Zcash. It inspires that in me, but I also know there's a lot of practical get your hands dirty work to do, and I would love to be more involved in that. Like someone else said, I think all the candidates are great, and so Zcash is going to be in really good hands, but I would love to be able to be part of it in this way. And thank you also for the great questions that kept this going for so long.
Okay, well, this call has been recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube so that anyone who wasn't able to join us live will be able to watch it. Once it's available, which will likely be tomorrow, we'll be opening up the ZCAP poll, and that will run until the end of the year. And the results will be announced on January 1st. So with that, I want to say thank you to all the candidates who are standing in the election. And don't forget that 2 of the candidates, Anx01 and Zcash KR, couldn't make this call, but you can learn more about them on the Zcash community forums. For now, however, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending upon where you are in the world, and happy holidays.